Hi everyone. Uh, we'll start at 7:40. Let's wait for a few more people to join in, then we can begin.
Hello, Greg. Are you speaking at the moment?
No, I wasn't speaking. We're waiting for a few more people to join. We can begin at 7:40.
For real? How am I going to hang them in my room? That's my question. Where?
So you can put them on the wall. So you see that side where the bed is. Like
so they look like falling reeds.
Yeah, where the front lights. Or at the kitchen.
They were 900. So that's how they're meant to look, like reeds. Hey, but they are long. These ones are really long, man.
Hi, Urbaners. If you don't mind, kindly mute your mic. Right, so welcome everyone to this session for Hack4Climate. We're going to talk about data science essentials for this hackathon. So if you're not part of the hackathon, there is a hackathon going on currently, Hack4Climate, where we are essentially hacking for climate. It's a hackathon where we are coming up with solutions to solve problems around climate change using tech, of course. And we are really emphasizing on the use of data to solve climate change because it's the insights we get from data that will help us make informed decisions. As I said in an earlier session, you can't make an informed decision if you aren't informed, and that's where data comes in. So today we are going to talk about how to set up your environment in VS Code. So this is going to be how to set up Jupyter notebooks and GitHub in VS Code, and how you can use all of them straight from VS Code. And then we are also going to talk about using APIs in the data science lifecycle. So before we begin, maybe we can just get a word from one of you. Like how are you liking the hackathon so far? Sorry about that.
Mark and Mavic.
If you have any questions or concerns about the hackathon, as I was saying, if you have any questions or comments about the hackathon, now would be a good time to ask them before we begin. Yes, Nova, go ahead.
Hi. So my question is about
Go on. Nova, you're muted. Can't hear you.
oh, sorry. I was saying my question is about using Postman. So for the data that we are querying from the API, using Postman is kind of limiting in terms of the data that you're getting back. For example, if we write a Python script instead, we're able to query all the data using one script, but we'd have to like do it over and over again to get the same result in Postman. So I'm not sure whether we either don't know how to use it well, or we don't have a right workaround around it.
Okay, great question. So with Postman, we'll have a session tomorrow, but if you have an urgent inquiry, you can text one of the mentors in the group. I'll share his contact in the group, or you can reach out to me as well, and then I'll share the contact and you can talk to him about that.
Okay, thanks.
Right. All right, if there are no more concerns, we'll start in a few minutes. Nova, your hand is still up. You have something else? Okay, I'm guessing that was by mistake. So in the meantime, what are your expectations for today's session? Like, what are you expecting to learn from us during this session?
Hello.
Hi, Linus, go ahead.
Yeah, my expectation is to just grasp the requisite basics of data science.
Mm-hmm. Have you done any data science project before? Or have you, yeah.
No, it's going to be my
Okay,
first one, and I'm really elated to be here.
it's nice.
Thank you.
So So as you can see on your screen, today's speakers are Victor Sabari and Melissa Mishuki. Victor Sabari is going to show you how to set up your data science environment within VS Code. So I'm going to learn how to use Jupyter notebooks and GitHub straight from VS Code. And then Melissa Mishuki will show you how to work with APIs in the data science lifecycle. So without much further ado, I believe we can begin with Victor. So if you're hearing me, Victor, go ahead. The stage is yours.
I'm reading the comment here, and guys are really excited to learn on how to use APIs in data science, and that is what Melissa will cover today. So if you have any questions, you can write them down somewhere. Then when she comes on during the session, be sure to ask her. And if someone who wants to know how to use Jupyter notebooks on VS Code, yeah, you're gonna be shown that as well. That's another area of expertise by Gregory. Hajuk sent a div, but Jupyter notebooks on VS Code, the perfect guy for that. Yeah, so Victor will be taking us through that. Yeah, and you can follow in on the session. Or you guys want another icebreaker kama ya jana?
Hi, Victor. Are you there? Okay, so I think he's having issues with his mic.
No, can you hear now?
Okay, yeah, now we can hear you.
Oh, wait. So I was having issues with the mic on my end on my computer, so I had to join using the phone. If that's okay, but I'll be sharing my screen through the. I'll be sharing my screen for VS Code. So can you guys view my screen?
Okay, let me stop sharing mine. Then you can share yours.
You can.
Not yet. I've just
Not
stopped
yet?
sharing mine, so you can now share yours.
Okay. Stop sharing. Which meeting was that again? I mean it. I was in a wrong meeting. Okay. So let me start by sharing my screen. There's a bit of an echo.
Yeah.
Let me
Yeah.
start by sharing my screen. Share my VS Code screen. So I guess everyone can now. Greg, you confirm.
Yeah. So it's loading, but I can see you've started sharing. So still seeing a blank
Okay.
screen though. Yeah. Yeah. Now I can see VS Code.
Is the So mine was to show you guys how to spin up Jupyter notebooks on your VS Code, which is a relatively easy thing to do. All you need for this is the Jupyter notebook extension. You need a Python and you need Python installed in your computer, and that's much about it. So regarding when installing Python in your device, you could opt for Anaconda, because Anaconda comes with most of the data science tools, so you don't have to pre-install. You don't have to install again any of these tools like scikit-learn, pandas, numpy. That's why when you are installing any environment, you'd use Conda. But in so let's start by installing Python in the device. So in my device, I have different versions of Python installed. I have Python 3.8 and I have Python 3.10, 3.9 also. So does anyone have an issue with installing Python? Please comment in the chat so that we install Python. But I don't think anybody would have an issue installing Python. Let me post the question in the chat. So I guess most of us, oh, Greg is asking why I didn't upgrade to Python 3.11. I think Python 3.11 is unstable, and I do uh, projects. I do web development projects using Django. So Django is stable in like 3.8 and 3.9. If you use something like 3.11, you might have dependency issues. So that's why I use 3.8 mostly for my device for work. I'm not upgrading to 3.11 anytime soon. So since all of us know how to, since we know how to get Python into our device. If you don't know how to get Python, you go to python.org, you download the latest version of Python that you find. Ama you download a stable but mostly you download a stable version of Python, because you'd find you'd find that you'd outapata dependency issues with you'd get dependency issues with newer versions of Python. But then when you download the ones which are stable, like 3.10, around 3.10, 3.9, the ones which have their maintenance status as security, meaning they've been there for a while. The 3.11, 3.12, and 3.13 are a bit unstable. I haven't really used them for any project. So I wouldn't advise right now to be using 3.8 or 3.9. I wouldn't advise to anyone to be using 3.11 or 3.12. You can download 3.10, 3.9, or 3.8. If you are somebody who would want to explore, you could download 3.13, I guess, the pre-release version, and work out the bugs for yourself. So we'll start by installing the Jupyter extension in our VS Code. I hope Melissa is around the corner because me, I'm about to finish. So when okay, when you go to when you are in your VS Code, there's always on your the left bar, there's always the extensions, whatever the extension tab. So you click on it. These are different projects. You click on it, and you download. You search for the Jupyter extension, then you download it. So here it's installed in my device. So it comes. Of course, it comes with an extension pack of other. It's an extension pack with other extensions. It comes with other extensions. So you download them all at once. So after you downloaded, let me switch to the release version. But after you've installed Jupyter on your notebook normally, and you have Python on your device, the next step is to open a new project. Let's open a new project. Let's open a new window. So let's open a new window. So when you're here and you have Jupyter installed, let's confirm if it's already installed. So when you have Jupyter installed in VS Code, you press Control Shift P, yeah, to open the commands. Then you create a new. There's an option of creating a new interactive window for Jupyter, and now you select create new Jupyter notebook. So normally, VS Code will detect the Python versions that you have in your device. So for example, in this case, I've been using 3.9 Conda, the 3.9 Conda version, which I think is stable for data science. So normally you'd wait for the activity here. I hope it's you can see the cursor where it is on the screen. So normally you'd wait for it to detect the kernels, the Python environment in your device. So for example, I have Python 3.10 that was installed in the Windows environment yenye ilikuja na, because I've been doing some insider Windows Insider upgrades, and I've been having Python 3.10 as the default Python in Windows, but obviously nobody uses the Python that's installed in the global environment. You'd end up breaking your projects, especially when you're doing projects using frameworks like Django. Also data science projects, you'd get dependency issues. So I have Anaconda, which I use mostly for my data science work. I have 3.9. I have Anaconda is 3.9, and then 0.12, and then I have Python 3.9, which now I use mostly for my web development projects. But then for 3.9, I create virtual environments I create Python virtual environments before I embark on any project. Not so that I can control the packages that I'm installing on the environment. So in this case, we use the Anaconda 3.9 since these are data science presentation. So hapa juu can I like yeah. So on the right, we've selected the Anaconda Python version that's installed with on our device. So what are the benefits of installing Anaconda? Anaconda comes with pre-installed Python, pre-installed data science and machine learning packages. So the basic ones like scikit-learn, the scikit-learn, pandas, numpy, matplotlib, you know, the first libraries that you interact with in a data science project are normally pre-installed, normally come with Python. So
Hi,
basically,
Victor.
okay,
Hi.
hi.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm if the screen you wanted us to see is the one where you're installing the Jupyter extension. Hapo kwa VS Code.
Yeah,
Okay.
the screen isn't working.
No, I just wanted to know if you are talking about like the screen on the extensions page or like VS Code, because that's the one we can see.
Oh, that's the only one you can see.
Yes.
I guess it's the net, eh?
Yeah, or maybe you're sharing a window and you are intending to share your entire screen.
Oh yeah, I've seen my error, sorry. So can you guys see the Jupyter notebook that I'm on? Can you see the Jupyter notebook that I'm on?
Okay, so
I
we're
was
waiting.
sharing a window, sorry. I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
sharing a window before.
Yeah, now we can see it.
So
Yeah, so
okay, so
maybe
let
you
me
can
start
just, yeah, okay, sure.
recap on what I was talking about.
Don't say
So
anything.
since we were installing the Jupyter extension in VS Code, after it's finished, you press Control. When you're in VS Code and you want to start a new Jupyter notebook, you press Control, Shift, and P to spin up the commands. And then in the commands, you look for Create Jupyter Notebook. So there are other commands, but in this case, we look for, create Jupyter Notebook. So I created the first one here, and now this is the second one. So here utapata on the top right of my screen, there's an icon that's loading, and then there's text for detecting kernels. You press on it, and then you select any of the Python versions that you've installed on your device. So normally, it will take time to detect the Python versions in your computer. It depends on which device you're also using. If you have a good processor, it will spin up faster. If you're using the newest, M3, if you have an M3 device, an M2 MacBook, these will obviously be faster. but in this case we are using an ICO 5 for 2018. So normally you'd get all your Python versions listed here. So you select. So in this case, I'm using Anaconda because Anaconda, like I said before, comes with the pre-installed data science packages. So using VS Code on using Jupyter Notebook on VS Code is an easier way of using Jupyter than the normal way ile could install Jupyter as an app to use the navigator for Anaconda, because you find if you have a low-end processor, the navigator for Anaconda will be taking a lot of time to load, and it can be very frustrating. Anaconda can misbehave when you're using when you don't have a good device for data science. So that's where that's where VS Code comes to the rescue, because the Jupyter extension for VS Code, I guess it's light, so normally you don't have to struggle setting up. So here, I don't know why it's not listing the other kernels. So normally, since the Python so all of these are the Python environments in my device. I hope you can see. Greg,
Yes, you can see
able
them
confirm.
from 3.9, 3.10.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So 3.9 is the one that's installed globally in the device, on the device. Then I have 3.10. The other 3.10, I don't know why I'm using it. I don't know why it's here. And then I have 3.9 I use mostly for other types of other Python projects, but I normally create virtual environments on it first. Then I have obviously Anaconda, which I use. I have the Conda Python version, which I use for data science projects. So we'll select that. What's the time? It's 12. So don't save. So since we've selected the Python version for our Jupyter notebook, now you can work on the Jupyter notebook. So for example, to make sure to test if the environment, if the Jupyter notebook is working, we will run the simple Python hello world like any other language. So here we have okay. Okay. So here we have a print. Yeah. And then we run. So Python is working in this case. Python is working in the Jupyter notebook. So the next thing is to I guess so I'll go over the interface for the Jupyter notebook. So Jupyter notebook is how is it normally referred to? It's a line by line compiling for Python. So the good thing about Jupyter is that when you're working with a data set, you can go over different parts of your project and make adjustments. So for example, normally when you're working on a data science project, you'd find yourself making modifications to the data set, which is also not advised. If you're using the data, you should make different versions of the data set. So if there's original data, you create versions of that data while working with it throughout the project, so that you don't mess up with the raw data that you have. So in this case, we have Python working. So Greg initially wanted me to do some explanatory data analysis, but then I think time is fast spent. So that's basically how to spin up Jupyter Notebook on VS Code. So let me go to GitHub. Was I supposed to do GitHub? Greg.
Yes, show them how to use GitHub. Yesterday we had a session showing them how to use GitHub, like generally, but today you can show them like how to use it, how to use the GitHub extension. So you just pull and push using the, okay, not just pulling, you can push, how to push using the extension, the UI, your GUI.
The extensions for GitHub on VS Code.
Yes, on VS Code.
Okay. So what was covered yesterday?
Yesterday we did the basics of GitHub. We covered creating a repository, pushing to a repository, pulling from a repository, and then forking, pull requests, and branching. So essentially, like what I just wanted you to show them is like when you make a change on a file that is being tracked, the extension Apple will like notify them. It'll like you'll have like, yeah, those blue notifications on that extension. So I just wanted you to show them how you can like commit from that side. Yeah, from that side. How you can just like commit something and then push it to GitHub from there. And then that would be it.
Okay. So we'd have to log into GitHub first and create a repository. So let's start by creating a repository for this particular presentation. So in this case, we create a new repository. So name data science project, GitHub project. Private, add, public, create repository. Oh, you can't see, sorry. So I've created a repository, data project, and now we'll go back to VS Code. So I guess creating a new repository was covered yesterday, and it's basically it's an easy thing to do if you have a GitHub account. So me, I was to, according to Greg, I should be showing you guys how to use the extension for GitHub on VS Code. So we've created a new repository, in this case, data project. here on VS Code, you must make sure that you have your GitHub account signed in. For signed in, if your GitHub account is signed into VS Code, it will also be signed in into extension. Meaning, if you want any, if you want to work with any of your repositories, they will be listed. So in this case, we open. So this is the GitHub extension on VS Code. You can install it normally you can find it in the extension market and install it. Does VS Code normally come with Nini?
No, it
Normally come with
doesn't.
GitHub.
It doesn't come with the
Yeah, you have to
extension. You have
install
to
it.
install it.
I've had it for long. Okay. So in this case, this is the extension for GitHub. We open GitHub and then we choose the repository that we want to open. So in this case, we look for data project. Is my name. Let me see. Okay, so let me sign out and sign in again into my GitHub account. Is it installed? Oh, yeah. So this is the extension that's supposed to be installed on GitHub before we embark on anything else. I'm installing GitHub on this account. Please. Just to open. So let's open the repository that we anything spinning
Uh,
You know what, Gregory? I'm
yeah,
having issues with my with my GitHub extension.
maybe you need to initiate like a Git repository locally, like Git init, run Git init in your terminal.
No, I don't. I think it's. Mhm.
You have to be in a repository to do a pull request.
Yeah,
So it has
I have
to. It has
to
to go to
to
clone it first, right?
open up a repository, but then I'm not getting that option from the extension.
Okay, so
I'll let
yeah, you could let
you're
Melissa
saying
take
something.
it off from here, and then
Okay.
maybe at the end of the session, if you figured it out, you can show us.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that session, though. It's been really insightful. I believe everyone has now learned how to use Jupyter notebooks on VS Code, and I hope having that environment all set up in your VS Code will be easy for you to like work quickly instead of having to shift between your browser and VS Code, trying to open up Jupyter notebooks on your browser and then GitHub on browser and like trying to connect it all at once. So, Melissa, if you don't mind, you can take it off from here. Hi, Melissa. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Only want to see my. I'm using. I'm not going to be necessarily doing a presentation. I'm going to be going through. A few notes. I didn't get enough time to do the presentation bit, but it's still okay.
Jumon, ulikuwa na watu wengine ndio watu wako serious, nyinyi ndio mko serious. Niko shoka na group wako serious.
Hello.
Hey,
Let me just. Just a minute. Sorry. Dun, dun, dun. Mhm. You can see my screen.
yes, we can.
Yes.
Can you see the points? Because I feel like that. Oh, it's not- Dun, dun. Just a minute. Let me stop sharing. Mm. I'm seeing the right screen. Is seeing something with guide to working with APIs in data science?
No, we are seeing your calendar.
Okay.
I'm seeing that.
Let's share from one.
I'm seeing that Victor would like to finish his presentation, so maybe he can finish it while you're still
Okay.
figuring it out.
Sure, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. So let me share my window for Nini. And then restart new window. Sharing, don't save. So see, my screen can be seen. My empty
Yes.
VS Code screen.
Yes,
Okay.
you can.
Yeah, so in this situation, we can go over what we learned before. So what we learned before is after you've had Jupyter extension installed and you've selected the Python version that you want to use. And here we are talking preferably of Anaconda versions of Python because it comes with most tools pre-installed. So here Control Shift P, then you get a new Jupyter notebook. And then for VS Code, I wanted to ask, did you guys use the command line ama mlitumia GitHub desktop?
Yeah, so yesterday we were just using the terminal on the command line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the graphic user interface for VS Code, yeah, it's easy. So normally you'd the source control icon on the right tab, on the left tab is where you find most GitHub operations on, but kuna extensions. There are obviously different extensions, like for GitHub Actions when you're running when you're running automated projects. So Control Shift G, terminal source code devices. So here with the folders open remote repository. So since this is a new window on VS Code, so no folder was opened, and even the Python the notebook that we've created isn't saved in the computer. So in this case, you have an option of course, opening a folder in your device, creating a new folder in your device, opening an existing one, and then opening a remote repository from GitHub. So in this situation, we'd open a repository from GitHub, and then we had a repo that we'd formed for the presentation. So here I have the repos that exist in my GitHub account. They'll normally be listed here. We have data project that we formed, but I'll open a project I've been working on. My last data science project, yapo ya Dr. Nini. So the notebook we created, like I said before, isn't saved. So when you're closing VS Code, you'd be asked to save it or to let it go. In this situation, we'll just let it go, and then we spin up the remote repository. In this case, we have Dr. This was a project on data camp, and we were exploring the So in this for this project, this project has a notebook this project has a notebook that it has a notebook that's part of it. So this is where I was doing the data analysis. This is the notebook where the project was. So when we've cloned the repository from GitHub, we have a local version of the repository in our device. So in this situation, we'd be using in this situation we have the Jupyter notebook opened up on VS Code, and then it's detecting the environment that we're going to use. But like I said earlier, you just click on it and select the environment that you have. In this situation, we used Anaconda. So Python environment, and we use Anaconda. as our selected Python environment. So for example, we'd run all. It's still detecting in the Biaquana slow. Okay, it's selected Python Anaconda. So it's running all of the. It's rerunning all of the. It's rerunning all of the. It's running all of the lines in our notebook file from in our notebook from Git from our GitHub repository. So in this case, I won't make any major changes because this is a project in my portfolio. So I'd make maybe I'd add a comment because the Git normally recognizes any type of changes that you've made, hata kama ni a full stop. So in this, I'd make a comment hapa kwa nini. I'd make a comment in my first line, in my first Jupyter line. For example, here, file not found because obviously, wait. So here my first sim, you can see the changes I'm making, Greg.
I haven't seen a change so far, but I can see the cell you're on and the file not found error.
Oh yeah, I'm there. So here I just make a comment. My project. I'm not making a big change. So since this so we made a project on the Jupyter notebook that that's being hosted in this repository. So we want to now commit the change that we've made in the Jupyter notebook from the repository and push it to GitHub. So here, the only change I've made is that I've added a line. I've added a comment on my first line. The comment for my project. So we'll go to source control, and then here, can you see Greg? Hapa mnaona source control. It's not showing on my phone, so that's why I have to continue asking.
I'm seeing source control, yes.
So okay. So here in source control, whether you're using in any type of project that you're working with, be it JavaScript, Python, any type of change that you make to the repository will be highlighted here, as long as it's a repository that was made on GitHub, and then you cloned the version on your device. So in this case, so I guess because in the command, using the command line, when you're pushing any type of change on a repository or on your project, you have to give a commit message, and then the commits that you've committed to change, you can push them as one. So in this case, we've only made one change, and then hapa kwa message we have slight changes. I really don't have slight changes. And then we commit, we could decide to only commit, and then also we could commit and push. So the comment I've added in my Jupyter notebook in this project has already been committed and pushed to GitHub. So maybe I'll go back here. I'll go to GitHub. I'll go to my GitHub and see if the change is already made. So I'm currently sharing my window for GitHub. So we'll go to that project where it is. It's the discovery of handwashing. So here, wait. So here's the project. Now we'll see the if the commit we've made on our local VS Code machine in our local device reflects on GitHub. Now here on the notebook file, you can see that we've made changes 1 minute ago, and the commit message was slight changes. So that's how to use the extension for GitHub on your VS Code. So remember, you clone the repository. You create the repository on GitHub, on the command line, and then you clone the repository, and then you open it as a normal folder on your device. What will happen is that the repository will be cloned to your device, so you'll have your own version that you'll be working with on your device. So after that, you go to source control. Let me stop sharing and then share. After that, you go to source control. After that, you go to source control, and then any type of change that you'll be making on any file will be reflected here. I guess I finished. Greg.
Yes, you are. Thank you very much for showing us how to use the graphical user interface for GitHub on VS Code. Now I believe Melissa is done setting up. So if that's the case, Melissa, you can just unmute, share the screen, and take it away.
The problem was not setting up. It's the screen sharing bit. I don't know why it's sharing the wrong screen. Here's a pair. Okay. I'll just go ahead and just share my whole, I don't know, my entire screen. And I hope you can see my screen now. Right?
Yes, we can.
Just a minute. So we can start. So I was supposed to cover one data science lifecycle and a bit on working with APIs and data science. So I'm just gonna go briefly over some of the concepts that we have. I didn't have enough time to make slides, so I'm just gonna go through these notes very quickly. Yeah, let me just put it that way. So first and foremost, if there's someone who mentioned that they are trying out for the very first time carrying out a data science project, and if this is the case, you need to understand a bit more on what is the process around creating, going about this science project. So first things first, you need to understand the PCDM methodology, and basically what this stands for. It's cross something. I don't remember the whole thing, but it's just a standard that is used for working through the science. So the first step is business understanding. The second is data understanding. The third, data preparation, modeling, execution, and deployment. Now, just because I put it this way does not mean that it's a linear process. It's actually.
Hi, Melissa.
Hmm?
Are you able to zoom in a bit because the font is quite small?
Maybe I just share the presentation where it's from. Can you give me a moment so that I can do that?
Yeah, sure. Although we could see the notes, it's just like this part here for crisp DM that is a bit small.
Is it clear now?
Yeah, it got better, but you could enlarge a little bit more.
I'm at 180. It's a screenshot. So it's
Oh,
expected that
okay.
will
So,
become less. I'll explain. So the very first step is business understanding. Oh, I was explaining that this is not a linear process. Rather, it is cyclic, and you might at one point or another go back to a certain step as you go along. So the first step is business understanding, or rather, in a situation, understanding what's the whole purpose of this project and what are the goals that we want to achieve. Based on one, the hackathon is Hack4Climate, so we're basically trying to achieve how can we use data or data science or machine learning to help solve for some issues that we have, or even create more awareness around environmental awareness. Yeah, let's just put it that way. So the first thing is now determining the goals. So we already have some of the goals that we have. We can also split down our objectives. And then the next thing is determining mining goals and creating a project plan. So given that we are on day 2, by now you should have some sort of project plan of how you're going to go about things. And this means you already know who's going to handle what in this particular instance. You already kind of have an idea of where you're getting your data, and if not, you can figure it all out. And 3, what are the steps that you're going to be taking on each day, or the timeline that you're working with. So that's that. You also have to set out your objectives, and then in each step you have to figure out whether you just have to figure out, are you on the right, are you there, do you have the right team for this, and if not, do you have the resources to prepare yourself. And the next thing is now data understanding. So this requires us to do collecting the initial data that you're going to be working with, exploring the data and verifying its quality, also checking if it's relevant for whatever task that you've set out to do. So you can collect your data using various means, of which one I'll be explaining. And some of the places in a real world instance, you might have to go to people to collect such data. You might have to do field work. You might have to do surveys and such. But in this particular instance, you might have to work with data that is available to the public. It might be a bit hard given the time period to access it from an organization, unless maybe you have someone from the inside. But yeah, let's just put it that way. Once you're done with this, you've verified its quality, you're good to go. You can always still go back to the step of collecting data again if you feel like you need more data. After that, you now do data preparation. So this involves selecting what are the columns or what parts of the data do you want to work with. Another thing is cleaning your data. There's no data set that usually comes without some issues. This could be let's see, maybe someone writing O as 0, 0 as O. Some of those instances you find there is null values or places where there isn't, there is missing values, so you have to figure out how you're going to clean the data. If you're having data coming from several sources, you might now have to either bring all together, if maybe like this thing, joining or concatenating or whatever that you're going to go about. So you have to bring it all together. Now, while mostly it's modeling, you also have a bit of data analysis that is going to be done before you get to modeling. And not all instances require you to do like to create a machine learning model. Some you can just you can actually gain most of the insights that you need to. It's not necessarily like you have to do a machine learning model. Sometimes analysis is all that you need. But in the instance that you do, you have to select a machine learning model that is relevant to whatever you're working with. So if it's a regression problem, you're working with continuous data. This is usually numerical in nature, and though there are so yeah, you're working with numerical data in classification classification instances. You're working with categories. You want to classify some of these things, and this might require you to choose a model. And sometimes it does not necessarily mean that you're just working with one model. You could work with several models. Then you have your base model to compare it to. This is why you generate your test design or your test train, and then you build your model, and then you assess how good is your model. So this is usually where you check for precision and such things. So yeah, that's that. Now, after you are done with creating a model, you've gone through all the steps, and so far you're okay. You can now get to evaluation. Evaluation is where now you check out what are like how your models faring, how you compare all of them and evaluate the results. If they're performing poorly, you might need to go back to modeling. You might need to go to data preparation. Maybe there is something that you've missed out on. Again, this particular step can be very, very present when you're doing machine learning. I mean, yeah, or you've gotten to the modeling part of your project, because sometimes you need to do a bit of feature engineering. You need to change how you like. There are just a few things that you might need to go about when you're doing all this. Yes, so you might find yourself juggling between two steps. And then once, if you feel like up to that point you're okay, you now determine what are your next steps. Do you want to, you can create, what's the word? You can create an ensemble model of all the models that you're working with. Or you can just choose to now create your report. So a report here helps people from an untechnical or a technical background understand your work. What are the insights that you have? What do you recommend, and such things. And this is also very present when you're getting to deployment. So when you get to deployment, this is where maybe you might decide to pick your model, so that you can work with it in a different environment, or yeah, let's just put it that way. So you have to plan your deployment. You can also plan monitoring. This like now when you like large scale, you can do monitoring, and there are very many tools to do monitoring. But in this particular instance, it's not that needed. Then you create your final report and review your whole project in a general sense. Up to that point, are we good? Are we good so far? Gregory,
Yes.
we're good.
Yes,
Any questions
we're
at this
good.
point?
Not from my end, unless anyone has a question.
Okay, so let's get to APIs. Now, if you want to understand APIs well, think about them as it's like a middleman, or in any instance, just think about them as I'm looking for the right word for this. But let me just put it as you basically it's the restaurant example and is usually used in most instances. When you go to a restaurant, you never go to you don't usually go to what's the word? You don't go to the kitchen and ask for your food. Most of the times what happens is that you usually first go sit down, then you go to a waiter and then you ask them what's available at the moment, and they tell you, oh, this is what is available, and then you order, and then they take the order to the chef, and then the chef does whatever the executor requests. So maybe I've gone and then I've asked for pilau, and then so the waiter goes, executes my request, the waiter brings back my chicken and pilau. So think about APIs like that. So they're just gateways to accessing data in this particular instance. So in our instance, we'll be talking about we're talking about what's the word for it? We're talking about environmental data, or data that is basically solving for environmental issues or climate issues. While in this particular instance, we'll talk a bit about how you can create your own. Most instances you'll work with pre-existing APIs, and there are very many APIs that you can work with, which will help you get the data that you need. But even before you get to that, you need to know the basics of working with APIs. In my demo, I won't be necessarily guiding you through how to create one, but I'll just go through how to work with a pre-existing one. And the one that I'll be working with is the YouTube API. Slightly different from what you might work with, but it's just an example to show you how you can work with them. Now, I've already talked about what an API is. So APIs usually define a set of rules or for interaction between software applications. Different applications get to interact with each other, and basically this usually happens. They usually use HTTP requests. Now, there are different types of APIs that are available. There's the REST API, there's the GraphQL API. But I wouldn't necessarily get into deep with what they do, but rather I won't get into deep with the different types. What should I? Maybe I should. Maybe. Just a moment. Add the notes right here. Just a moment. Okay. What screen are you seeing at the moment?
We're still seeing your notes.
Okay, so I think that is this. Just a minute. Just a moment. So, okay, let me just leave them first. I'll just add them to this note and then share them with you. Then you can go through them. But in my instance, let me just talk about this. So there's the REST API. There is, I'm trying to remember the others. Why are they not coming right now when I'm presenting? But let me just leave them. So what do you really need in this particular instance when you're working with APIs? Or how do you go about choosing the right API for your instance? One, you have to identify which kind of data that you need. Already it's set that you need data that is around climate change. This could be in different spheres. You're not limited to which sphere that you can work with. You have environmental tracking, you have climate resilience, agriculture, you have transport and mobility, you have sustainable energy, education and awareness. So you can go through each one of them and then you decide, okay, this is the one that I want to work with. And then the next thing is evaluating the API documentation. There are quite a number of things that you need to note about this. So the documentation around an API is the one thing that will guide you to knowing, okay, these are the endpoints that we have, these are the formats of data that we have. And I feel like, I hope I'm not confusing someone who's a beginner. If there's anyone who feels like I'm going a bit overboard and needs me to explain something, they can just tell me. I can explain it for them. So you have to go through all these things and then figure out if this is the right API for you. And then the next thing is on authentication. Most APIs will use secret keys or tokens. This is Twitter. If you're getting any API that is from Google, you need a key. So you just need to figure, even from Azure, you need a key in most instances. So just figure out if yours requires authentication through a key and get one. And then if the reason why you need a key is, one, you need to have one it's mostly for security purposes and to identify you as the user of the API. Most times they usually come with encryption, and it usually when you're using secret keys in these particular instances, they just help you to limit the amount of what's the word for it? What resources, the amount of resources that you're using. So sometimes in most instances, if you're using Twitter, if you're using APIs from Google, they usually have rate limiting. So yeah, let's just put it that way. And then also for accountability purposes. Some don't necessarily need one, but most require one. Yeah, let's just put it that way. And then the methods that are there, yeah, let's put it that way. If you want to now, if we now, what's the word for it? I'm going to say in this particular instance. So let me just go through. If you want to understand API documentation, these are the things that you just need to note. You need to note just the endpoints that are there. So in most instances, they'll list them out, and some have more additional endpoints. So if maybe you're working, if you go through the YouTube API documentation, you note this. But most of them, especially if you're working with one from organizations like Google, Microsoft, Twitter, they usually have code examples which you can just change to work with them. But for most of the ones that I'm seeing, I'll share also where you can get some. I don't know if they have, all of them have code snippets, but for those ones, they usually do have one. What's the, just a minute. So you've done choosing the API, the right API. We have gone through authentication, so you have to get an authentication. And if you want to make requests, so when you're making requests, you're going to use HTTP methods. And most of the methods are get, post, put, and you just go through which kind of methods are you working with, and when to use it. When do you want to use for, which one do you want to use for retrieving or sending data? So this for getting is retrieving data. Posting is for sending data. And then if you're working with an API from scratch, you just have to specify your endpoints. But in this particular instance, because you already have most of the endpoints set out, you can just work with whatever that's there. Specific endpoints usually have specific URLs to locate for defining location and the type of data that you want. So yeah, you can just work with that. And then most times when you're in these particular instances, when you're working with API, the kind of data that you're going to be working with is in the JSON format. So if in this particular instance, most of you'll be working with Python, there are functions for convert, like you can figure out how you're going to read. No, you just trying to think about it. You can convert your JSON file into a data frame that you can want to work with. Or you can even create it into a dictionary, specify whatever data that you want to extract in that particular instance, and then now convert it into a data frame. Yeah, so let's just put it that way. So if you want to create, you're going to retrieve data in this particular instance, and this is when you're scraping data, or you want to get data from, because in this particular instance, you're not posting in most instances, you'll be using the get request method. So you need the requests library, and in this particular instance, you just go, you specify what is your endpoint. So you have your URL, and then you carry out the get request. Then from there, you can now print out your data and just get a view of what's there. And then if you're having parameters, so what kind of parameters could you be working with? Okay, we'll just go through this when we're looking at the demo. So if you're having parameters, this could be something like top 10 values, or what's the other word? It could be, I'm trying to think of a parameter. Okay, I can't recall one at the moment, but if you're working with one, you can just specify them in a separate variable, and then you pass them through the get function or get method. So let me just move quickly to this, and then you can just see what I'm trying to explain. So this was a simple project of YouTube API. It was supposed to be a sentiment analysis project. What we are working with, we're working with the YouTube API, so you have to get this from the Google Cloud platform. If you're working with any of the other APIs, I think I'm going to list out where you can get a few more. So there's here, you can get some of the APIs, most of the APIs that you can work with. From one, there is Rapid API, so you can work with it. You can work with this for getting most of the APIs. I think there's one for city data. So if you're going to be working with transportation, you can work with that. Let's just put this there. Yes, so you can work with this data. Another one that you can use to get public APIs is this one. And the third one for public APIs just sources that you can look into for working with APIs is this one. So there is if you're going to be looking into whether there is the weather APIs such as weather open weather map or weather underground. If you want to work with the what's the word? There's one for a Google one. I'm trying to remember it. The map one, I think the Google Maps API. I'm trying to had opened it. Just get it. Just get it. Open Maps direction API, is it there? Okay, let me just leave it at that. Okay, you can just view some of them from here and try and look at what you have to work with. Most of them also are listed here. So if you want to look into them, you can also look into them. Some are paid, some are not. That's it's up to you to figure out which one you're going to work with. Yep. Yeah, this one was supposed to be free code camp, sorry. So yeah, that one. I'm going to still share the notes from here. So a small demo. So in this particular instance, this is how the YouTube API looked like if you want to break it down. So so there's the root, and then there are items, and then under items there are several things that you can get from there. So this could be the title, description, when it was published at, their content details, their statistics. So in my situation, I was just exploring this. So in my request, so for YouTube, it's already specified. You don't need to work with YouTube unless maybe you want to work with getting data from like videos that are related to environmental awareness and such things. Yeah, so for me, in my instance, this is what I have. So what I created a small function which goes through. So you have a JSON response once you've executed this. So it's youtube.channels, so channels, all the channels that I need, and then .list, and then I specified what am I looking for. And then, so this was content details, statistics, and then you can join them, and then you now get a JSON response. And then from the JSON response, now you can create sort of like, so you had all data here. So you have sort of like, it looks like a dictionary. Let's just put it that way. So you can now take them from there. So in this particular instance, we have, I specified what I want. I appended it to my all data in this particular instance. So let's just look, does it bring it up? Where is all data? Okay, let me just, oh, and then I converted it into a data frame. So when you have it into, the first thing that I had was, I converted I got the JSON responses, I selected what I wanted, I appended it into a list in the form of a dictionary, and then, and then I converted it into a data frame. So if you come here to channel.stats, once you have run your function, this was what I had. So this is just random stuff, not that I had anything. I was not necessarily doing this project for a project or anything. It was just for learning purposes. So I was just learning how to work with the YouTube API. And it's quite, okay, I'm not going, it's not very specific to whatever that you're going to be working with, but I'm just showing you how you can go about things. How you just convert your JSON data, select whatever that you want. So you have to actually get a view of what kind of data that you're going to be getting from that. That's why I have this for myself. And then from there, when you've selected it and appended it, now you can convert it into a data frame and work with it from that point onwards. Now, I don't really expect you guys to be necessarily creating your APIs, but in the instance that you do, it's pretty easy to create one from scratch. Easy, not so, okay, let me just put it that way. Let me just put it as it's easy. In the instance, in this particular instance, you can just go through the fast API documentation to catch up very quickly on how you can create one, create a fast API. I didn't create a demo necessarily for this class. Sorry, it's not a class session. But it's very easy to create an API for your instances. I don't know. Yeah, you can create an API. Maybe you want to call whatever. How? But I don't see. Okay, maybe you want to work. Okay, let me just put it as, maybe you want to create an API for your model or search. I'd not done the demo for that. I think I'm going to work on one and then share that. But I was looking at working with APIs in the sense of working with pre-existing ones. Now, these are also just around working with pre-existing. This is working with one that is already, that you're working with. I mean, when you've created one from scratch, and just these are just best practices. When you're working with, okay, also in general, when you're working with APIs, don't make unnecessary API calls. If it's not needed, don't do it. Unless you're learning for the very first time how to work with it, don't make unnecessary API calls, because you're going to be using also your credit. And in some instances, if you go above the rate limits that you have also for a day, you can't use it any further, or it will always give you an error. Yeah, let's just put it that way. I think I've already talked about how to understand API. I think I've repeated myself here. Okay, so once you've gotten your data, or the relevant data that you have, you can now move to, you've already done data extraction. You've seen how I extracted data from mine. Once you've extracted data, you can now, and you've identified the key information from the response, you can now work with analysis. So and perform basic analysis on the data that you have. This is just use matplotlib and pandas for that. I feel like I've repeated myself somewhere in this note because I copied this from I was working with another whiteboard, but it was in and Sumba. So in general, if you want to get it right when you're working with APIs, try out different APIs. In particular, in this particular instance, you can look into if you are working on the weather, if you're working with data that requires data from a weather API, we have the Open Weather Map and the Weather Underdog. Maybe you want to get real-time data, or you want to get data from previous occurrences and maybe try and do predictions to forecast this in your application. Well and good. You can just try out the 2 or any other APIs that you want to work with. If you want to just create your own API, start with a very simple API even before you add your ML or whatever that you want your API to do. Start with a very simple one and set it up and then work with that. Now, another thing is that over time, APIs usually change, so you might need to keep up with the changes that are made. And changes could be because maybe there's new management and such as like Twitter, there's newer management. So like for Twitter API, previously what you could do with the free tier has been reduced to almost minimal, like I think two or three options. When before people could even create bots and such, and that's not really feasible right now. Try as much as possible to look for free APIs, because APIs that are paid are really, really hella expensive. But some usually allow you to actually, what's the word for it? Try out. You're given credits. So like for Azure, you have credits, yes. For Google Cloud, you also have credits. So try as much as possible to utilize those credits for your project. Yeah, let me just put it that way. Unless there's any question, I'm open for any questions right now. I've talked about, okay, I think in my instance, I was thinking about, in my particular, so Lois, I was talking about, I had thought that it was targeted at working with pre-existing ones. It's still okay. But if you want to work with one from scratch, it's just that I don't have one that I can share at the moment. Maybe I share them, I can work on one and then I can share it with you. Is that okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Any other question? Does someone who also, how can you prepare data for, okay. I think I'll also, Gonzalez, I think I can look into that and then share it with you. Also, you can look into, there's something called prompt flow that I saw in Azure. So maybe you can look into that also, because you can customize your data to, you get input data and then create like sort of like, you work with the OpenAI, meaning work with OpenAI model. I'm trying to remember how it works because I just saw it in a general sense, but you can work with it. But it's usually mostly for responses for this particular instance. But look into it also. Any other question, or I can stop there. I think we've gone for far longer than we had planned to go. Gregory.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa, for that very, very insightful session. I think personally I've been able to take my understanding beyond the restaurant analogy. Now I understand APIs a little bit better and deeper, and I thank you for that. So Melissa is also within the participants group. So if you do have any more questions with regards to the session, you can just reach out to her and she'll be able to help you out. So believe there are no more questions or comments. So I'll end the session now and I'll share the recording with you. Thank you all for joining. If you have a question, you can reach out to me or Melissa.
Or Victor.
Oh yeah, or Victor. Right, thank you all for joining. See you all tomorrow.